Hi, my name's Tiger Craven Neely. I am a retired California school teacher. I identify as gay, and I am making these videos for posterity and hopefully helping the California classrooms and educators understand what LGBT rights are, what it's like to be LGBT in the classroom as a teacher and as a student, because I was LGBT growing up and I was educated in California. So anyway, my usual repertoire is I read a book, talk about the book, talk about some personal experiences being gay and teaching or being gay and growing up in the California classroom, and then talking about some laws. And so today I'm going to read, I'm going to read a book called Neither. And as soon as I find it, and I muddle around too. Uh, where's Neither? Right there. You should be able to see my screen. Neither by it's either Arlie or Airlie. Airlie Anderson, and forgive me, Miss Anderson, if I mispronounced your name. Once upon a time, there were two kinds, this and that. These and those. One, I don't know why it does that when I feed it into my scanner. One or the other until honk. What kind are you? I'm both. You can't be both. You must be neither. I'm neither. Neither tried to play this game. You can't play with us. You're not rabbity enough. Neither tried to play that game. You can't play with us. You're not birdie enough. Why don't you find somewhere else? You're not one of us. You're neither. Neither, neither, neither. Oh, sad. Makes me sad to watch this. Where did you come from, honk? I'm going to talk about this book after I read it. I'm from the land of this and that, but I'm neither, so I'm looking for somewhere else to fit in. This isn't somewhere else, but you will fit in here. Where is here? Excuse me. So many different kinds. The land of all. Come play with us. That's very welcoming. But I'm different from everyone here. I'm neither red, nor orange, nor yellow, nor blue. Exactly. Excuse us, we're from the land of this and that, but we don't fit in at home. We are looking for somewhere else. But you said I was neither. You said I should go somewhere else. Uh-oh, are they going to be accepted? Well, this isn't somewhere else. This is the land of all, and everyone fits in here. And once upon a time, there were many kinds, this and that, somewhat and whatnot, either, very, sort of, just, rather, a little, neither, and both. And all were welcome, leaving the land of this and that. So, what a wonderful book. I want to thank the author, Miss Anderson, Arlie or Airlie. And I want to say this is a very profound book. It's very simple and it's a great metaphor. And I'm just going to go through it and just tell you how I related to it. Once upon a time, there were two kinds, this and that. And immediately I realized the theme of not fitting in, which could be a metaphor for gender identity, kids that are identifying as trans, sexual orientation, kids who are identifying as lesbian or gay. I've shared stories of I've had sixth graders coming out. And a sixth grade girl came to me when I had shared with one of my students, said, what are you doing this summer? I said, well, I'm spending it with someone I care about very much. They said, oh, your girlfriend? I said, no, my boyfriend. He went out, found a girl identifying as lesbian. She might not have said the word, but he went out, found her. She had communicated something to him. He brought her in and said, Mr. C, I have the same problem you have. May I ask you a question? What do I do if my parents and I don't agree? So she was having some identity issues and conflict with parents already. She was only 12. So anyway, not fitting in. Not fitting in. She kind of felt probably like neither in the story. Gender expression, gender identity, sexual orientation. Anyway, these and those, or one or the other. It's my sideward page. Until honk. What kind are you? I'm both. So I wanted to say too, I felt similar to what I'm assuming Ether felt. As young as third grade, I remember in third grade, I was having a crush. I had a crush on someone of my own gender. And I think instinctively or kind of conditioned through society, I knew I wasn't supposed to communicate it. But I remember there was a game the boys used to play, and I'm not saying this game was appropriate, but this is what happened on the third grade playground, is the boys would go out and they would slap the girls on the bottom, chase them around. And I tried to join in the game, and some of the girls said, you don't do it like the other boys. And already it was like I was, 8 years old, feeling like I'm neither, I'm neither. I'm not fitting in. So I can relate to that. And I can relate, like in junior high and high school, where it's a natural part of development for adolescents to form cliques and find similarities. And a lot of similarities have to do around sports or attractions to the opposite gender. Well, for the LGBT youth like me, I remember being so jealous that all the males in my peer groups were forming cliques, and I was isolated. I felt alone because I didn't talk sports. I did play football, but I didn't like some of the other sports. I had an aversion to most other sports. So I had an aversion to sports, didn't talk sports, and of course the guys were talking about girls, and I didn't talk about girls. So I could relate to this. Now, my purpose for reading this is mainly to talk to educators, to have empathy for LGBT kids in the classroom. So I hope you can see how LGBT adolescents, especially like grades 7 through 12, are feeling, how they feel isolated, and why there is such a high rate of suicide attempts, according to CDC and a lot of other surveys and research. There's high instances of depression, of dropping out, of missing school, of feeling, I know even the Department of Education in their framework talks about LGBT in their section, chapter 20, and they recognize that LGBT kids in grades kindergarten through 6 experience feeling like worries about being harmed, but in 7 through 12, they add violence. They're actually experiencing violence. And I know I spoke with, one time I asked a counselor, this was around 2015, I say, excuse me, you're a counselor in the high school in Modesto. So I'm reading all these statistics about how kids are experiencing violence. LGBT kids are experiencing violence. I'm wondering if you're seeing that. And she said, coincidentally, I have 2 high school LGBT clients who tell me that they're afraid to go to the Gay Straight Alliance support group meetings because they feel like they might be physically or like violence. They might have violence perpetrated on them. And those are the words that she used. She used the word violence. They felt like they would have violence, you know. Anyway, this whole theme of not fitting in on LGBT increases depression, and how do we counter that too? We represent LGBT by literature in the classroom, not being heterocentric. You know, heterocentric is when you're passing out flyers to go home. You don't say, this is for your mom and dad. Sometimes you say, hey, this is for your mom and dad, or your mom and mom, or your dad and dad, whoever you live with, your guardian, your grandma, your aunt, whoever's in your family. So anyway, neither tried to play this. You can't play with us. You're not having a lot of rejection. Neither tried that. And then neither goes and skip some pages. A lot of teasing, bullying. By the way, kids can be cruel. Kids can be cruel. And the sin of, especially early adolescence, is being different. So kids always want to fit in, try to fit in, be the same. Have you ever seen a clothing trend or fad, FAD, and how everyone locks into that? Everybody wants to wear with the clothing that's in because they want to fit in. They want to be the same. And if you're not, you get teased. I shared a story of a sixth grade boy came to me. He said, Mr. C, so-and-so call me gay. They call me gay. You know, because they were recognizing. And that's very common for kids to either you discover you're LGBT or sometimes your peer group, even before you do, recognize you're different and will point it out. In that case, that was sixth grade. So K through 6, kids are being pointed out, hey, you're different. And then 7 through 12, sometimes it's physical violence, bullying, fighting. I'm from the land of this and that, but I'm neither. This isn't somewhere. Where is here? This is so many different kinds. A land of all. So I want to say, when I was in high school, I finally met someone. I met my first out LGBT peer. He was a senior, I was a freshman. And I remember being so excited that I remember after school, we both stayed back. We talked for about 3 hours after school in the hallway. And I thought, wow, what's going on here? Here's someone I can talk with. I don't have to talk sports. I don't have to talk girls. Of course, we were both gay. We're both gay. And neither was out at the time. And this importance of having like gay straight alliances at your school so kids can connect and meet other kids who are gay. And this also reminds me here of how a lot of times gay people who have been rejected from families, it doesn't always happen, but a lot of times families will say, hey, look, you're either, matter of fact, in my senior year in high school, I had a friend who was gay, went to a different high school. He said, I'm moving to San Francisco. I said, why are you moving to San Francisco? This is your senior year. You're in the middle of your senior year. He said, well, my parents said, if I'm going to be gay, they're going to kick me out. This is a true story. And I said, well, how can you not be gay? If you're gay, you're gay. So in other words, they wanted him to pretend he was straight. You know, don't hang out with gay people. Don't admit you're gay. And that happened a lot. And so a lot of times, gay people, like in myself, when I were feeling rejected by family, and I have had a great family. I haven't always been perfect, but they form chosen families. And I can remember some low points in my life, feeling lonely, where gay people came around. I remember there was a potluck that I was invited to after I went to the support group of LGBT people coming out of the closet. And I thought, this is like a family, like they were adopting me, and I felt really, so anyway, that's common too. Ideally, you'd be accepted by your parents. A quick story. I remember going to at the junior college in Modesto, they were offering, it was called Adults Who Are Divorced by Their Children. And it was about for adults whose children had cut them off for whatever reason, usually children with children. And so I was in this class with about a dozen, mostly ladies. I think one husband came in. So it was 2 guys, including me. And it was mostly women whose children said, we don't want anything to do with you for various reasons. And they were traumatized. Uh, and I remember thinking, I thought, and I'm not sure if I voiced it to them, but I thought, this is a great example of how traumatic it feels to have family turn their backs on you. And I thought, here are all these adults who probably have multiple kids, and only one is turning their back on them, and they are so traumatized. And I thought, how much more does an LGBT youth or child feel when sometimes it's both parents turn their back on them because they are LGBT and they're not choosing it. And I remember sharing, I used to go to the high school in Modesto once a year for about 6 years and share my testimony of being gay, how it was like being a minority in the LGBT minority group. And I remember a girl came up to me afterwards. She said, "Can I share with you a story?" She was a high schooler. And I said, "Sure." She said, "My mom, when she found out that I am lesbian, she locked me in my room and said, I didn't come out until I uh, changed my mind. So I became religious for religious reasons, changed my mind, and said I'd go to Bible studies and stuff." So I don't want to get into that too much, but she probably felt rejected. And mom may have had good intentions, thinking, I want my child. And I'm not saying you have to uh, subscribe to this ideology to go to heaven, but that her mindset, the parents' mindset was, my child doesn't repent, she won't go to heaven. So I can understand the parent. I don't agree with it, but my whole point is that sometimes LGBT kids are rejected by families. Sometimes they find strength in the LGBT community, like GSA groups. And I can relate to that. So what I want to say too, here at the end, where these two that rejected neither at the beginning now wants acceptance in the group. And I want to say that's dynamic has happened to me, where I felt rejected by certain people, like family members or religious leaders. And then later, I had to decide, when my self-esteem was built up and I wasn't so dependent on their acceptance, I had to decide whether or not I accept them with their small-mindedness or their bigotry. And so that's an element that often happens in relationships. And there's a movie I don't recommend for children, but for adults. It's called Rock Haven. It's an LGBT movie, has some nudity, so FYI, little warning, a caveat. But the protagonist is struggling with religion and his homosexual feelings, and he's trying to decide, and the mom finds out and says, look, if you choose your homosexuality over religion, and she said, to stay here in this house, you have to abstain from your homosexuality. You can have the feelings, but you have to abstain, and you have to go. She said, you have to go to this training, this conversion therapy camp or reparative therapy camp. And so he chooses to leave his boyfriend drama, flies away to another country, and then he changes his mind later, realizes what a mistake it is. But the point I wanted to make is at the end of the movie, he tells mom, "Hey, mom, I can't go to the conversion therapy camp." And the mom first says, "You're out of here. You have to move out." And then she changes her mind. But he says to her, this very profound exchange between parents. He says to her, "Mom," they're hugging, and she says he can stay. "Mom, you got to realize, though, I can't change. I can't change." But what's even more profound, I think, is when the mom says, "Honey, I hope you understand. I can't change either. I can't change either." So that's a dynamic too with a lot of families. So I know my kids, I love my kids. I was very evangelical, that's why I abstained from homosexuality for 23 years. Well, TMI. And then I became agnostic, and I said, what? I don't think I'm going to hell if I'm homosexual. And it's a long, long story, but I had raised my kids to be evangelical, and 2 out of 3 of them are very evangelical today. And we have to navigate, how do we work around that? Do we allow that to separate us? Do we avoid the topics? Do we accept, love each other? What is it you agree to disagree? Anyway, so a lot of good things, a lot of great themes in that book. Trying to think where I wanted to go to next. I want to talk about, and I don't have a lot of time because I pontificated about all those other things. I want to talk about so many things I could talk about. Just Project 2025. I mentioned that in my last little video. I didn't really have a lot of time to talk about it, but I just wanted to make some points here. I want to say which, in our government, I don't, in the video yesterday, I was talking about the symbol for gays. Before it was a rainbow flag, it was the pink triangle, and how Nazi Germany was persecuting the homosexuals, with them in concentration camps. Quite as bad as that. Hopefully, we won't get there. But we do have persecution in our government right now. So right now we have Project 2025, which is very anti-LGBT, and they're very explicit about it, undoing laws that protect LGBT people. And President Donald Trump said he had no intention of incorporating to 2025. But look, this is from my Google search right here. These are people that were architects or influencers, supporters of Project 2025, and they're now appointed in the White House. We have Russell Vought, Tom Homan, Brendan Carr, Stephen Miller, Pam Bondi, Peter Navarro, Carolyn Levitt. So either they were architects, or they do trainings for people, or they give advice. That's a lot of people. Also had, this is the ACLU, and what they say about Project 2025. I'm going to try to paraphrase it. See, removal. Trump's administration would reinstate and escalate the removal of anti-discrimination policies, according to the ACLU, American Civil Liberties Association. Down here, discrimination by the federal government wherever it can, including by banning transgender people from serving in the armed forces and blocking gender affirming care. There's some examples of what the ACLU thinks Project 2025 will do. The weaponized federal law against transgender people across the country. Anyway, a lot of this, so it's just not my opinion. This American Civil ACLU, you can read Project 2025. It's very explicit about undoing the laws to protect LGBT people. I know I'm not doing a very good job paraphrasing this stuff. Sorry about that. But do some research on your own here. These are some of the things I just Googled. How has Trump changed LGBT issues now? Restricting passport gender markers. I think that's being litigated right now. But he came out and said trans people can no longer do a non-binary indication on their passports. They have to do, according to Trump, they have to do their birth gender. So, and it's being litigated right now, I believe. The federal definition of sex, they're saying it only can be your birth sex now. Restrictions on gender affirming care. Changes to health insurance, prison, healthcare cuts. Transgender military ban. So there's few exceptions, which is terrible. It's terrible. People are giving of their lives to serve, to protect, defend our country, and because of being transgender, which in my opinion has no effect on their ability to serve, they're being discriminated against, being scapegoated for religious reasons. And what happened to separation of church and state? It's ridiculous. Legal challenges, transgender student protections rescinded. ban on transgender athletes, removal of online resources, restricted prison housing. By the way, the number of trans athletes, my understanding is it's single digits. So I know those issues are controversial, but why so much emphasis on discrimination over an issue that involves just a few people? It's hyperbolic. And I even heard Donald Trump on an interview. He was saying, I don't even care about trans issues myself. It's just my voting base gets very excited. It incites them to, it's incites, INCITE, incites them. So in my opinion, Donald Trump is using the trans issue, using the trans population to get more votes, reduce enforcement of Title VII, which protects LGBT people, challenges the DEI programs anyway. And I think I shared this story of how, this is just it's just example, it's not that big of a deal. But in California, we do have protections just in our state for LGBT people. People are not allowed to discriminate for housing, for employment, for credit, for business. But if you're not in California or a state that has those protections, you can be discriminated against. You can go into a store and they say, "I'm sorry, you're a homosexual couple. We don't want to serve you." And how Project 2025 wants to make across all the states, including California, they want to take away California rights to those protections. And in some instances, they might have. My husband and I were having some work done a couple of days ago, fixing an electronic thing, and we hired some electricians to come in. I thought, should I lie? Please try. Should I lie and tell them this is my roommate, out of fear of being discriminated against? It's those kind of things, and our government right now wants to take away my rights. Anyway, I'm kind of running out of time. So anyway, thanks for hanging in there. I hope you enjoyed the story. Hope it wasn't too helter-skelter, bouncy around. Anyway, I always like to end with this quote. The only perverse thing about homosexuality is society's insane inability to accept human nature. It's just human nature. It's like being left-handed. We're not asking, like my friend in high school who said he's moving to San Francisco our senior year. I said, what? So my parents said, I can't, if I'm gay, I can't live with them anymore. I said, well, how can you not be gay? How can you not be who you are? It's insane. It's insane. Anyway, so as educators and so we want to support. We don't want to scapegoat people for something they can't change. We have freedoms to be who we are. Anyway, God bless. God bless. Love your students. Love yourself. Take care. Bye.